Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EOcafe, where the EO community meet. Very pleased to see you all here today. We have a change in program, as I explain in just a minute. But firstly, just a reminder of the rules of the cafe. Please keep your microphones turned off unless I ask you to invite you to join in the discussion. You can certainly keep your cameras on. We're very happy to see you and for you to see us. If you have questions, please put them into the chat. That way people can see what's coming up and be prepared. But I will ask you to rephrase your own question when it comes. So be ready for that. So today we're planning to talk about outreach. Now, some of you may recall that at the last EOcafe 2 weeks ago, I announced that we had Simonetta Celli in the cafe. Unfortunately, she's busy, very busy preparing for the ministerial, and had to call off at the last minute. Now we anticipate this and try to have some backup cafes planned. So I really thank Stefan and Ilias, who join us today, for that being available at quite short notice and being willing to join in the discussion. But I think it will be interesting. I think it will be. We want to talk about outreach, the role of outreach, and the role of evangelists in the outreach. So people who really care about and talk about the subject. Both of our guests, Ilias and Stefan, are very active communicators about the use of Earth observation. Stefan, who is the Copernicus EO community manager, who is well known in the Brussels scene and works a lot with the Commission, and Ilias Pechilivinadis, who is a hydrologist and the agriculture EO evangelist from the Fire Forum. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but maybe first I just invite each to say a few words, introduce themselves and a bit about their background. So who wants to go first? Stefan?
Ilias.
Okay,
Ilias.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you got nominated.
Yes. Thank you very much for inviting me to this EOcafe. Well, indeed, Jeff, you're one of the first that tells my surname correctly. I'm very pleased for
Pure
that.
luck.
But as a profession, I'm an associate professor and a senior researcher at SMHI in Sweden. This is the Swedish Hydromet Institute. And I've been working a lot with the Copernicus Emergency Management Service and also with the Copernicus Climate Change Service, with introducing research kind of like insights, but also operational insights. And on top of that, I had this lovely pleasure to be the first EO evangelist for the agricultural sector, which gave me, a lot of opportunities to talk to many people from different target audience. And we will talk about that a bit later.
We will come back to that in a minute.
Yeah. That for me.
A very specifically part of the subject for today. So Stefan, I think everyone knows you, but please, if you just introduce yourself and your background, how you got here.
I don't think everybody knows me by far. I'd like to compliment what Ilias said about himself. Importantly, he's one of the top contributors to one of the key components of the Copernicus Emergency Management Service, which is EFAS, the European Flood Alert System, for which SMHI is responsible for dissemination. In this particular case, it doesn't mean dissemination in the sense of communication. It means disseminating the data. So he's directly involved into really producing one of the key components, really important early warning services from SEMS. Okay, so I'm Stefan Urevic. In fact, I love the title of this EOcafe because for years, 17 years now, I have thought of myself that this is not a job, that's a mission. And it's a bit of a mission in the English, the term missionary, like converting convert, and going to Africa, South America, to convert, to preach. I've used often the term to preach the Copernicus gospel. So I like this term of evangelist. That's one of these things, when I'd love to have invented it myself. So congratulations to the Vire project for that. So I fell into GMES by accident 17 years ago and became a user uptake, market development, and communication consultant. And as Jeff said, I work with the Copernicus support office, where I'm an advisor. I am what they call in social media the community manager for Copernicus EU. So the team that I coordinate is responsible for the social media of Copernicus EMS, of Copernicus Land, and a few other accounts that I forget. So this is basically who I am, just an old guy that's been in there forever.
We're still hanging on, Stefan.
Yeah. You know what it's like to be a senior advisor? Well, I'm a senior executive advisor.
Strategic advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you introduced a number of terms there, which is really interesting, because there's quite a few terms around this. I looked up outreach, and Wikipedia defines outreach as the activity of providing services to any population that might not otherwise have access to those services. So that seems to imply there's a delivery, there's an implementation. So I looked elsewhere. I found that my 2005 Collins dictionary does not even have the word in it. So I guess that outreach is a term that's been invented in the last 15 to 20 years. The Cambridge Dictionary defines it as an effort to bring services or information to people where they live or spend time. So I guess there we're getting closer to what we're doing. And I just noted that even the Oxford University even boasts about its own outreach activities, where it goes out on the road and sells itself. So and they call that part of their outreach. So I think that sort of talks about where we want to go today. So I also then went back in time, because we want to talk about the media. Stefan is going to tell us about the use of EO in the media today, the mainstream media. And of course, that was a big thing back at the beginning of the story, when Landsat was launched in '72. All the newspapers were publishing images from different parts of the world, and these very spectacular pictures that we've become used to. And it was perhaps one of the main activities even at the time, non-research scientific activities at least. That interest was rekindled in '86 when Spot was launched, and people were getting higher resolution, sharper images. And of course, we were seeing parts of the world that probably never seen before. Pictures coming from space, but certainly of remote areas, and even of places that were known. Everyone was looking for places they knew, but from a perspective they'd not seen before. So that was back then. And of course, the outreach was basically to members of the public, and providing information on the world that we live in. 18 months ago, so winding long way forward, April, we had an EOcafe on the use of EO in the media. We had Remco Timmermans and Jonathan Tirone from Bloomberg. He talked about the evolution of the use from 2009 and contrasted changes that have been taking place from 2009 to 2021 in terms of, the availability, the number of satellites, the opportunities, the timeliness of access to imagery, and of course, again, the resolution of the images. And as we'll hear in a moment, things have changed a lot more moving on today. And we're seeing even more images appearing in mainstream media. At lunchtime today, the Belgian TV channel, main Belgian TV, showed an image from Sentinel-2, as it does every Thursday, of somewhere in the world with a story, a geographical story, a political story, an economic story. So that's become a regular feature. And in the Guardian this morning, there was an article about how UNOSAT is using images to track the damage to cultural sites in the Ukraine. And they're building up a dossier of evidence that can be used in future, or a record of the cultural sites and what can be done. Because as they say, countries are largely defined by their culture. And of course, the war in Ukraine has provided a steady stream of images that I'm sure we're all familiar with, and I guess Stefan will talk about it in a minute. But that's part of the picture. And as I said, things have really moved on and taken off. And I think Stefan is really at the heart of that. So really pleased that he's with us today to tell us more about how EO is being used in the media and the outreach to the media. So Stefan, perhaps you can talk to us first about that, and then we'll come down to the evangelist and the fire activities. Stefan.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, when we were discussing preparing this EOcafe, you came up with a very blunt question. Why should we do outreach? Why? Well, it's pretty obvious to me. In French, there's a saying that I love. It says, "Il y a le savoir-faire et le faire savoir." Difficult to translate in English, but I'll try. There's the know-how, and then there's making people aware of that know-how. So we're all trying to sell something, even if the cost is sometimes zero in the case of Copernicus free and open data. But the reservoir of potential users or potential clients is so large that we cannot expect all our users and potential customers to know about our products and be aware, just get there and please sign the contract. I mean, I remember many years ago, the company I was working for was trying to sell some electronic equipment to the German Air Force. And the guys came back and said they have no clue. They've never heard the name of our company. They don't know us. Oh, interesting. And they asked me for like, and we prepared a brochure. The company was called Dassault Electronique. So the brochure was called, "Please meet Dassault Electronique." We understand you don't know us. And inside, I know ESA in particular, and I say hello to Stephen Coulson, who I see on the screen. ESA was the first to emphasize the importance of user testimonies vis-a-vis the industry or the agency boasting about how great were their products. Well, let's have the user say what they think about it and hopefully give some positive feedback. And inside that brochure were only press clippings about the company and its commercial or technical performance. So have other people say how great you are. So there are so many cases in which we are faced with people that have never heard about Copernicus, or in some industries that have never used Earth observation. And therefore, if we want to be successful, in the case of companies, well, sales, in the case of Copernicus, just increase the number of users, because the number of applications is nearly infinite. That's the main purpose. And the purpose with two objectives. One of them, I already mentioned, is awareness. And the other one is transforming, for the companies in particular, this awareness into sales. But you can't go to somebody and sell them anything if they've never heard about the name of your company, because they'll immediately, or about your product, or about there is a product that does this particular, that performs this particular function. So at the end, in the particular case of Copernicus, there's another reason. In these days of Euroscepticism and populism, it's quite important to make aware the European citizens, who are both voters but also taxpayers, that at least there are some very clearly identified examples where their taxpayers' money is used for good. For the good of the planet, for the good of the economy, for the good of the environment, etc. And just going around and explaining to journalists or to politicians that Copernicus is less than €2 per EU citizen per year, well, that's a powerful message. So the reasons for communicating are pretty obvious. We've seen in the past, I would say 2 years, a dramatic increase in the use of Copernicus by journalists. And not only the use, but the demand. And in fact, they were unsuccessful, but I remember a French IT Earth observation company making a proposal for Horizon 2020 4 or 5 years back. They wanted to do a service for the media where it's like a press agency. You would basically take a subscription and then they would deliver images, animations, etc., etc. They weren't successful. I know already about a few EO companies, at least I'm thinking of one in Italy in particular, which I think is selling imagery to the TV, to the national TV. They have a contract and they regularly supply images that are potentially interesting for the viewers of the 8 o'clock news. So, and believe me, the growth rate is really amazing. In 2 years, in fact, I have prepared it's not a presentation, but it's just a couple of examples. So you will allow me to share my screen and show you the examples that I have prepared.
Yep.
So do you see my screen?
Yep.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
So, you here have a couple of examples of recent publications of Copernicus data and information in the press. And you see Reuters. Reuters is key. So are Agence France Presse and Associated Press, the three major press agencies of the free world, because they are sending their news dispatches and their images to thousands of media across the world. And they even have services in Spanish, in Chinese, in Russian, etc. Russian, maybe not enough, not anymore, but at least they are a very good transmission tool. So Reuters is sending out dispatches, Sky TV, The Independent, Reuters again, The Washington Post. Here it's hidden on my screen, but here you see again the Post. More examples: Bloomberg, La Dépêche in France, Il Sole 24 Ore in Italy, France 24 TV, Rai News, etc., etc., etc. And this is kind of new. We see both images. You see sometimes models, simulations, etc. At the Copernicus Support Office, during the peak of the summer, the wildfire crisis and the drought being all over the news, at the Copernicus Support Office, we were receiving 2 to 3 requests from the media every day. I got live on BBC News, on BBC World News, and not that it gives me any cheap ego thrill, it's just the fact that there is real demand. There is demand because they have realized that it's interesting information. It has a very strong science background. It's not, it's quality control, etc., etc. And why are they interested? If you look at statistics, all the medias have reduced their staff dramatically in terms of number of journalists that go out and make a reportage in some place, the number of photographers that they have in-house, etc. They tend to rely more and more on news dispatches from the main news agencies. And therefore, they're trying to differentiate themselves. Like, otherwise, all the newspapers every morning in a country would be publishing nearly the same stories. So they have a few investigative journalists, but to cover the news, they're looking for original material. Where do they go and look for original material? Most of them go on Twitter. I am personally amazed to see the number of journalists that become followers of Copernicus or Copernicus Emergency Management, etc. And then we see them publishing, and then we see them contacting us directly through direct message on Twitter, through the Copernicus Support Office, etc., etc. But so the community, the Earth observation community, the Earth members really should become aware of the power of what they have in their hands. In fact, there was in the 80s, as reminded by Jeff, quite an explosion of, well, also when the first VHR satellites became operational for non-military applications, we start seeing VHR imagery in the press. And in fact, look at Ukraine. The press is full of Maxar planet imagery showing the different aspects of the war. We see less Airbus. I wonder if it's a corporate decision not to use that too much vis-a-vis the media. These image providers do have a service to provide imagery to the press. I remember, for instance, at the 70th birthday anniversary of Operation Overlord, they made specific acquisitions of the sites of the celebrations in Normandy on the coast to deliver them to their media friends. So it's a reality. It could be a tool more used by individual companies or the industry, but I can indeed assure you that, well, I know ESA is doing the same, but we are, on behalf of the European Commission with my team, reaping the fruits of years of hard labor. How do we reach these people? Well, we reach them through, we published on the Copernicus website an image of the day every day. There's a mailing list. There's two mailing lists, one where citizens can register and receive it directly, but one from media. And so they get it directly. Then we get new names, we can reuse that list, etc. And we send messages through different means to the journalists that we've come to know when we have something that we think is of their interest. So there's quite a lot of. Twitter, again, is a very successful vehicle. I'll take a couple of examples. This was an image of the day that we published in June of 2020. It got 500,000 views. 112,000 people had engagement, like, retweet, whatever, with it. 73,000 people clicked on the link, and it was retweeted quite a number of times. But we got a call from Associated Press saying, or a direct message, can we use this picture and syndicate it? We said, well, this is all free and open data. As long as you credit the European Union and Copernicus Central Data, there's no problem. They syndicated that image. The result is more than 8,000 media mentions in Asahi Shimbun in Japan, in La Voz de Galicia in Spain, in like everywhere, absolutely everywhere. 8,200 only media mentions. Another example, the eruption, the volcanic eruption in Tonga, very good results on Twitter, but also the image is reused by the Commissioner for Crisis Management and Humanitarian Aid, Janis Lenarčič, and it's also reused by BBC, who writes an entire article featuring our images quite prominently. Other example of this summer, the drought, where one tweet sent as image of the day. Oh, not even, this was a Copernicus image. It's not even the image of the day. And then you see it's the Commissioner Sinkevičius, responsible for environment, ocean and fisheries, tweets about it, and then bingo, it's all over the press, in La Repubblica, in ANSA, etc., etc. So these are just a few examples, but if I'm a company and I've got something about, I don't know, the systems to stop the water flows at high tide in Venice are sinking, and I'm seeing this in my ground movement monitoring system, I'm certainly going to send that to a couple of journalists.
I mean, we seem to have moved, although I'm not quite sure how far away, from sort of the image accompanies the story to the image is the story. So the if we talk about the Siberian heat wave there, it's a nice image. The image itself doesn't tell the story. It's there to accompany the story and to make it sort of perhaps more real to people. You could say the same about images of aircraft destroyed in Ukraine that made an awful lot of noise in the media, but that's more directly telling the story. The image is telling the story. Do you see much evolution or difference, or how does that balance in the media?
Indeed, because of either the increased resolution, where by definition you see both spatial and temporal resolution, which by definition you see more things.
And latency as well,
Yeah.
the speed. Yeah,
you see more things, etc. So the 40-kilometer long column of Russian tanks, armored personal vehicles, etc., en route to Kyiv. Well, that illustrates a situation, but it's so unique. Wow, people can only look at it and say, "Oh, well, that's you really can see all these things from space." Other things, other images become indeed a story by themselves. And unfortunately, part of our success is linked to the greater number of disasters.
Yes,
but
and awareness of them as well.
When people say that to me, I'm sorry. Indeed, the Guardian sells more papers on a day where they say major floods in England than on the day where they just talk about something that is less interesting to the general public.
It was ever thus. Yeah, it was ever thus.
It's a fact of life.
Yeah. Let's.
This is also the cases where this type of services indicate higher value for the different audience. It's when they are able to monitor or even forecast something catastrophic or a hazard.
And sell more newspapers. Yeah.
And I don't want to dwell too much into that debate, but not all requests are for like positive stuff. In July, late July of 2021, we were receiving tons of requests from journalists to comment about the European flood alert system. Had forecasted, not forecasted the big flood events in Belgium and Germany. So there you have to cover yourself, you have to get speaking notes, you have to make sure that you say the right thing, and that you defend the service and the European Commission, because basically journalists are saying, "Oh, you did detect it. Why didn't you say? Well, why didn't you tell the people?" Well, we didn't tell them because it's civil protection is a member state prerogative, and they don't want the Commission to be sending out warnings that would throw people onto the streets, onto the roads, the highways, and create chaos. So sorry, we can't make announcements.
A subject in its own right. Maybe we'll come back to that. But let's move on to the sort of the other the other types of not so much types of outreach, but the other directions of outreach within the fire project. They created the fire forum and asked for people who enthusiastic about topics to come forward, and as a result 7 evangelists were selected for the different sectors in fire. And I'm happy we've got 2 of the evangelists with us today, but Ilias was is the evangelist for agriculture sector, even though his interests go much wider than that. So it was, as you said, Stefan, an interesting idea. I'm interested to learn more about it and what the experience of an evangelist is, and what the experience is and what's been learnt from it. Ilias, tell us your views on being a fire evangelist.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And I'm not sure if I can make such a nice story as Stefan did with all these great examples. I mean, I was so overwhelmed with the information there. But indeed, as you said, we were a number of like 7 people. We were coming from different, let's say, career interests. Some of us were working as scientists, some others, they had companies, some others, they're more like, they're doing a lot of dissemination. Yet we had more or less the same objective, to bring the good news to the targeted sectors. And there were 6-7 sectors selected, those that Earth observations could actually enhance their day-to-day operations day-to-day business. I mean, I had the privilege to work for agriculture which is somehow well connected to hydrology, the things that I do every day, and water resources management. So I understand the processes over land, and I'm able to give some advices from a scientific perspective also. And I think that our role was more to be, let's say, knowledge brokers. So we were quite well trained by the Fire Forum people to communicate the information as transparently, as effectively as possible to the sectors, like to farmers or whatever audience we had in front of us. And this is what we were trying to do in different occasions. So we were trying to identify opportunities, or we were recommended for some specific events, and we were traveling around, especially after COVID. We were unlucky from that perspective. This doesn't mean that we didn't do our duty to go around and present, but of course, communication is not a 10 minutes effort or 15 minutes effort. Communication is there where you tell you the story as well as possible, and then you continue discussing, you continue brainstorming, and you exchange insights and problems and challenges, mainly challenges. And this is what we have been doing. I personally have been talking to different events in Europe, and I have been collecting, let's say, feedback. And this feedback was going back to the Fire Forum people. Because as I told you, we are knowledge brokers. There's been a very big effort to compile a set of material regarding the potential of Earth observations for our sectors. And this material were compiled after continuous dialogue with users and workshops and so on. And then they were also filtered just to make sure that this is the right information. So when everything was kind of like well concluded, we were going around presenting these insights, receiving more feedback, and mainly our objective was to tell them, you know, you are not alone. Your problems is not only, I mean, there are hundreds of more people in your region, let's say, or in the country, that they share similar problems. And there's a solution, or there could be a solution. Actually, we should not say that there is a solution. Then we are a little bit putting our ego high up, but there could be a solution. And this is what we were doing. And of course, this doesn't mean that we know the answers to everything. And even if we do not know, we are there as communicators. We are collecting their questions, feeding back to the Fire Forum, and then reach them once again with a more, let's say, complete answer.
Well, that certainly sounds like your alternative definition of a knowledge broker, to take knowledge from here and help distribute it there. An evangelist has to, I think, it has to have even more than that. I mean, you have a skill, an expertise, a skill in communicating, an enthusiasm for the subject. What else is there? Anything else that's needed? How do we look for evangelists? How do we find more evangelists? Or are you the exception?
I don't want to believe that we are the exceptions.
No.
I mean, we have to think historically also, right? How did the evangelists start? They were 4, and then they were more and more and more. But of course, we praise those that they started.
Spreading the word.
So maybe they will praise us also. But this should not be the objective. I mean, this is a continuous process. It's the same thing. It works similarly as engaging with the users. It's not something that is done once and this is the end. It's something that requires continuous effort. And evangelizing, if there is such a word. Okay, good to know. Means that we are there and we continue bringing the news. By default, let's say our contract to do this work has ended. But you see that we are still around, and we are still communicating wherever opportunities are there. And this is how the game is actually played. If you need to keep your network strong, if you need to explore new opportunities for the market of your services or your business or whatever, you need to be continuous in the game and communicating these things. And then from my personal kind of like tone on that is that, I mean, I loved the material that was produced. I mean, I was actually telling them that there should be a strong scientific publication on that. That stays, you know, to reach another target audience. But I don't think that this effort should be forgotten. It needs to be enriched and enriched.
Yeah, I think it's good that we can draw some lessons from the experience. Stefan, I see you want to come in.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on your question. I have elaborated my own personal theory on how to do successful user uptake, communication, outreach, etc., which I can summarize saying if you want to be read, or if you want people to listen to you, you have to be read, R-E-D. And R-E-D stands for relevant. So you have to have something to say that is potentially interesting for your user, for your audience, for the journalist. The E stands for empathetic. I've heard in my career so many scientists, technical people presenting and having no attention whatsoever to the level of understanding of the listener. So adapting and trying to understand your target, whether he's a journalist, he or she is a journalist or a user or whatever. And the D is dedicated. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience. Like on Twitter, we've been tagging people at the Washington Post for maybe over a year before they noticed we were there, and eventually came back to us and asked for stuff.
Yeah, getting above the noise.
And that is indeed one of the challenges with the Evangelists of the FIRE project, which is, well, it's a project, and like all projects, it ends one day. But I'd like to also mention, because by chance I see one of them has joined this conversation, and he's certainly not a member of ERSC. There's also hidden evangelists. We don't even know they're there. And sometimes they immensely contribute to the user uptake and the awareness raising. His name is Celso Coco. He is a professor in a technical school where they train forestry technicians. So it's not a university. It's in a place of Spain I never heard the name of before I bumped into him. And he started on Twitter to talk about Copernicus using Sentinel-2, showing burn scars of ongoing fires, showing the EMS products, showing the CLMS, land monitoring, land use, forest, land cover, et cetera, et cetera. He can be credited to the fact that Spain activated EMS mapping, on-demand mapping, 25 times, I think, or 26 times this year only. Because he's targeted all the stakeholders, and he became like, he's now known at the Ministry of Agriculture, at the Ministry of Ecology. He's been invited to speak on TV several times. He has received the Dissemination Communication Prize of the Royal Society of Forest Engineers, and he's a purely voluntary evangelist. And if it wasn't for the social media, we would have never bumped into him. So we also have to be on the lookout for those who are already.
Amplifiers, indeed. Senso, if you want to comment, just raise your hand. But I wanted just to give the floor to Miriam, who is the evangelist for wind energy. But I was also struck, Stefan, by your red, and it's something that maybe Liz Truss could have done with knowing about your red there. Miriam, do you want to?
But you need to have also nice, or not nice, good communication skills.
Yeah.
I have seen relevant, empathetic, dedicated scientists communicating, and they are very into the details of science. They can lose the audience there. You need to bring very plain words, very plain language to the audience. And I think Stefan has been managed to do that, because scientifically, all these examples that he showed before, there's a very big research groups, a set of research groups behind. So because they are visualized in a nice way, somebody could digest the information and make interpretations. But Stefan can bring a very plain language and communicate that to the large audience. These are skills there. You need to have these skills.
Definitely. I guess it's part of being empathetic, but you're right. It's more than that, because it's the ability to communicate is so important. Miriam, can I ask you just to comment on the role of a?
Yeah, sure. I will be happy. I hope there is not so much echo where I'm located, and I don't have my my microphone. So thanks for the invitation to participate a bit. So from my point of view, I think this was a great opportunity, because sometimes we give for granted that people will be understanding what is the role of Earth observation, how we can take advantage of the data, all the case studies that we are seeing. And I would say that trying to bring all this communication that we have in our daily jobs, research activities to the broader audience, I think make us be more sensitive about what the people is needing, what the people is looking for. I mean, when they see the data that maybe they didn't know it exists, for being able to support the current projects, the current organization, the current companies even. So for example, 2 weeks ago, I was in Hamburg in this wind energy event. I was speaking with different people that they have been in the business for, many years. And then when I tried to share, all the benefits, they were like, why we are not doing this? Why we are not doing that? Even they have been already for several years in the industry. So I think this helps us to reach a broader audience that maybe before they didn't know the capabilities. And for me also, it's really important to share kind of the best practices that we have seen already, kind of already the case studies we are solving by using their observation data, because right now, as we already know, we have a really good problem to have. We have so much data available from all these different sources, open data from the Copernicus program. We have the commercial satellites. We have the SAR constellations going up to space. We have so many different sources, but then everything is spread all over the place. So finding this also can be challenging, I would say, for the audience, because they don't know where to start. They don't know where to go, and they don't know sometimes how to take advantage about all this data. So making simple case study in the one they can take advantage about all the benefits, I think change the mindset and also open the eyes about what else can be done with all this data available right there.
I'm always amazed. But we're in the bubble, so we're familiar. But I'm amazed that sometimes that bubble seems so small, and that getting outside that is part of the game. Best practices, I completely agree. I think it's really, really important. Stefan, you alluded earlier to the way that the companies can benefit. Maybe we can develop that a little bit more, because obviously we're here partly to help companies improve their market, improve awareness of the technology. How much is it about a general awareness of the technology balanced with the awareness of what a company can do? Because both are important parts of the mix in raising awareness. For the companies, they want to promote themselves, but that's much easier when there's a big, there's already a good foundation of awareness. What's your view?
I would say none of those, sir. It's not the technology. and it's not the company. Why? Because when you go to a car dealer and look at a new car, you're not interested in knowing where was the engine built and by who, how was this new technology developed, etc., etc. What you want to know is, what's the price? How often do you have to go to the maintenance shop? How many miles per gallon or miles per liter will you achieve? And what's the annual tax, if there's a big tax in your country? So it's all about the usefulness. So you don't go and sell your company. You don't go and sell INSAR. You go and sell, look, I have an image. You might be interested that the main tower of Milano is sinking, I don't know, or the Venice floodgates are sinking, or whatever. You have a story to tell. And that, believe me, journalists love that, especially if it's not in the daily feed of Reuters or ANSA in Italy or AMNA in Greece or whatever.
The car companies are spending millions, many millions on brands and promoting their brand.
Yeah,
so it's not just about the individual car itself.
But if you go,
you've got to get them to the showroom first.
Yeah, but if you go to a journalist saying, I am company X, well, either you say, I'm Airbus, and then they say, don't you make airplanes? Oh, no, I also make helicopters and satellites. And then it's easy. But if you go, I'll take a random name, Giovanni's going. If you go to and say, I'm Planetech, and I'm using this great technology of inverse SAR, whatever, interferometry, the guys will say, I'm sorry, I don't even understand what you're talking about and why you're talking to me. Well, if you say, I have a unique image where you could write a real story. Venice spent billions to build those floodgates, and apparently they've already sank by 20 centimeters since they were built. And I've not seen this.
That's also a reflection of the maturity, isn't it? And maybe that's because we're not sufficiently mature. Because if the journalist is aware of INSAR as a technology to measure that, it's possible to measure that, and a company goes and say, well, I've got this wonderful example, this wonderful product, they're halfway through.
Yeah, but that's what evangelists are for. And indeed, in their own area, the evangelists, whatever sector they work for, should identify the main targets. If you're agriculture, it's going to be some specialized agricultural magazines in various countries. If it's wind energy, there's also magazines about renewable, etc., etc. And in their zone of influence, whenever they because if you're talking about agriculture, for instance, a very impressive before-after image that just shows the dryness of the soil in the Netherlands or in Greece or in any place. That is also something. I mean, I've personally spent twice half an hour with journalists of La Nouvelle République du Centre-Ouest, a really small or medium-sized regional newspaper of Central and Western France, in showing them how to display the soil humidity index in EO browser in Sentinel-2 images, so that they could really do things super zoomed, showing in various areas of their zone of influence how the soil was way drier this year than it was last year.
Okay, Elias?
I think this is the biggest, well, it's not the biggest, it's one of the big challenges, that there is insufficient EO knowledge and skills when it comes to some of the users. And therefore, sometimes, the satellite data, they do provide too raw information, and you need somebody to process that. Yeah, they do not have this experience. But, it's also, you talk about usability, Stefan, and it's also the added economical value that their operations are going to have by changing their practices. What we have been asking is to enhance their service by introducing an EO-based approach. If we quantify, or if they have a perception that the this type of enhancement will not be, might be technologically appealing, but it will not have the economic added value that they would have expect. They might not go with it. So we need to demonstrate that. And I'm not sure if we demonstrate it. I think we're still very much conceptually trying to assess this socioeconomic value. We say, yes, you're getting higher spatial temporal information, better performance and so on. But we do not quantify, yes, you're going to get this type of million euros in a period of X in your business. If we manage to do that, then we have a metric that allows a better communication.
This of course is one of the things we try to do in SEBS, but it's really quite limited by the number of cases we can tackle. Bente has a question or an observation in the chat. Bente, do you want to join in?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I'm mixing in the presentations here. I felt like a dialogue. No, so what you said, Stefan, the example you gave, I just want to confirm that using the E in your red is underestimated in our fields. So one concrete example that really gave me an epiphany was when, I'm a trained theoretical astrophysicist. That's my background. And we were trained to be extracting ourselves as a person from what we did very strongly. You should not have a personal opinion about anything, right? Definitely no emotions. So in the early age of social media, something called Stumble Upon, I dared to use images, which is similar to the satellite images we have been talking about, images of the universe, right, of the various sorts. And I just said, I love it. This is a silly thing. It was so painful to do it, but sharing emotions, I think that was, I connected. I became super popular because people found me, even as an astrophysicist, unpretentious, and they identified with the feelings. And I think that's, when you feel it's so for satellite images, it's a way in. I think Jeff, you were saying, well, you were saying like people have brands and they're selling their brands, etc. But when you think about it, like Coca-Cola and Nike, they are not selling the brand, actually, they are selling a feeling, right? So, and I think this is something that we can use more bravely in our fields as well, in Earth observations, in satellite-based observations. I think there's a great potential of daring to, share some emotions. Yeah. So I support the E, Stefan.
Thanks, Bente.
It was a very good comment, actually. I liked it. And of course, it depends on your personal character, how able you are to share feelings. Personally, I would have shared my feelings if I know that the product that I am there to advertise is a good one. There, I will show a lot of enthusiasm, and I think it's a good way. It's also strategic to do so. But we need to be also very careful with products that still lack of reliability. So we have to control our feelings. That's my point.
Yeah.
When I read about using Sentinel-2 for precision agriculture with no caveat, I'm like sometimes, okay, that's a bit overdoing it.
Well, that's the sort of back to overselling, isn't it? But I mean, you're right. I mean, it's associating a feeling with so that you're promising the purchaser that they can also experience that feeling. So it's selling a brand, but by association with an emotion and with a feeling. And yeah, that's powerful. But I mean, it feels as though we're not at that level in what we're doing. And I come back then to maturity, and that the bubble is really still too small, and we have to we need to try to find the ways to push the boundaries out.
But part of the positive feeling is starting really to get there, like space in general and Copernicus in particular can have and do have a real impact in saving the world. Like climate change awareness raising to start with, just showing the melting ice, the dried up lagunas in Doñana in Spain, etc., etc. That is super positive. In fact, my former colleagues from the defense industry tell me, Stefan, you're so lucky. We're still selling. Well, now we're big bosses because we're old guys, still selling missiles or combat aircraft or whatever. You're saving the world. Great. And in the particular case of EMS, when we helped the media to illustrate, we produced a data visualization showing every day the increase of the lava flow in La Palma. Everybody I know in Spain has seen that image at least once on the 8 o'clock news. So, okay, it's written Copernicus and but it's like made with space. They start to understand that. And the space for good, space for the planet, space for development, Stefan, is something that is starting again in Spain now because of the forest fires and because of the eruption in La Palma. You would make an Eurobarometer just on Spain saying, who knows the name Copernicus? You would get something that is not ridiculous, now better than Galileo, I'm pretty sure, and they would associate it to some positive things.
I think, Stefan, your example is very valid, but it is tailored to the EMS, the emergency management services, and for the very big picture. And of course, there it's very important. But so you have the cases where an extreme event is taking place, and you need to take action there. But so this is one component, but there's also the components of our users, which are very local. I mean, it's one in one region, and all we try to do is like to change their business. So we're not talking there of something extreme being forecasted, and for that we want them to take an action, not only, but we want to change their business on a day-to-day kind of like phase or week-to-week phase. And therefore, I think that in these cases where we are still in the transition phase, where a lot of effort is being put to make this upgrading, let's say, and we have to be careful, because we have to make sure that the products are good, that they're ready for this type of operations. If they are not, we should communicate that very effectively, because if we sell something now, today, a product that is not ready, and we lose the trust of these users, it will be double or triple hard to engage with them in the future when the products will get ready. So I think that we need to have, I believe that we need to have those two approaches, perspectives.
I totally agree. The farmer won't be interested in saving the world. He wants to save his farm, or to optimize his business, or to comply with regulations on pesticides or on NUCAP reporting. So you won't get there with also, by the way, we're also saving lives and saving the world from climate change or something. And the other point is, older gents like Jeff and I, we remember in the 80s there was a first major overselling of EO which ended up in a big, long, we had to go through the desert to get back and have users listen to the EO core singing its song, because they were like, yeah.
That was exactly the way I was going to bring things and round it off, because it seemed a nice way to close it. Exactly, you know, the overselling in the 80s and promising, you know, such treasures coming from Earth observation images, and you know, people saw through it. I mean, the reality wasn't there. Now it is different, but we don't want to risk going down that path for a second time. Your story of the farmer, though, just resonates a little bit, Stefan, because again, on the television at lunchtime, alongside this sort of or after this, you know, the Thursday example of Copernicus, there was a story about wine growing in Belgium, and how the number of vineyards is increasing because the temperatures are becoming more conducive. And I think increasingly we see stories of concerns often linked to agriculture, of climate change and what the planning should be. So I think this is an area which is awareness is growing, and somewhere where that we can obviously make a mark. Okay, thank you everyone. Let's draw it to a close there. I wanted just to point out that Natasha's put into the chat information about the fire evangelists, and you can find out more about them and get in contact with them there. Thank you both, Stefan and Ilias, for taking the time to join us today. It's been an interesting discussion. I hope our audience have found it as interesting as I think we have. In 2 weeks' time, we have the rearranged EOcafe with Simonetta Kelly, leading up to the ministerial. It's, you know, an important time for renewal of Copernicus, renewal of the future EO program that's put forward by ESA. There's a lot of things to take account of there, and even from your point of view, to be delivering messages into your organizations, your ministers, your governments. So we should have a good discussion there around where ESA is able to support the downstream EO sector. That will be our focus, at least, provided that something else doesn't come up, of course. And I look forward to seeing most of you then. All of you and many more, of course. Thank you very much, everyone. As usual, please feel free to stay around. If you want to say something, just open up your microphone and speak. It's a little bit of a free-for-all now.